Welcome, friends. For today's courageous conversation, we are pleased to introduce our special guest, Dr. Malkhaz Songhulashvili, the Metropolitan Bishop of the Evangelical Baptist Church in Tbilisi, Republic of Georgia. Bishop Songulashvili's church, Peace Cathedral, is a global missions partner of Broadway Baptist Church. Leading the conversation is Broadway's own senior pastor, Ryon. If you have questions or comments that you wish to share following this conversation, please email us at info@broadwaybc.org.
Great. Thank you so much, Jen. It is such an honor and privilege to have in conversation with us today someone who is a dear friend, a hero, someone whom I just love and whose spirit radiates all across the world. And that is my good friend, Bishop Malkhaz Songhulashvili. Malkhaz, so good to have you here with us, my friend.
I'm certainly delighted to see you all. And I should be starting by saying how honored I am to have this friendship with the Broadway Baptist Church, which has been enormous encouragement and support for the work we are doing both in Georgia and in the Middle East. And this is my chance to thank you all for your very kind and generous support.
Wonderful. Thank you, Malkhaz. It's truly our honor. I know a lot of people at Broadway know about you, know about the Peace Cathedral, but surely there are some folks who are tuning in right now who have not yet had the privilege of learning about your work, your ministry, and who you are. I think they'll be delighted by our conversation today. But you know, one thing that probably just at the outset should be said is you don't look like the traditional Texas Baptist or even Georgian Baptist when we speak of Georgia here in the United States. And so you come out of a very particular kind of tradition within the Baptist house, and are a part of the Evangelical Baptist Union there in Europe, and more particularly within the Republic of Georgia. And I thought it might just be helpful at the outset for you to share a little bit about that history and tradition.
The Evangelical Baptist Church of Georgia came into being as a result of a merger of the principles and tradition of European Radical Reformation and that of Eastern Orthodox Church. So we have got I would like to say that we have got the best from either traditions. I am proudly Orthodox. I'm proud of my Orthodox background, tradition, theology, liturgy, aesthetics, but I'm also proud to be Baptist, which gives me courage, inspiration, freedom to be a Christian and human being in service of others in the 21st century. So we have got amalgamation of these two traditions together, and we would like to believe that by merging this tradition, we can serve the kingdom of God and the gospel of Jesus Christ much better.
I love how you put that, because my experience of you, having known you now for 2 or 3 years personally and known of you for much longer time than that, I think those two words, beauty and courage, go very nicely together in your tradition, in your church, in your own being. We can just look and see in the background your sense of beauty. That's something that certainly comes out of that Orthodox tradition, a sense of what you call aesthetic. And then the courage that your church has shown over these many years has been such an inspiration. So I really like that combination.
I think you're absolutely right. We have inherited admiration and respect to beauty from the Orthodox tradition, and we have inherited sense of audacity from the Baptist legacy. And we are delighted to have these two together.
I love that. Anybody who's ever seen photos of the Peace Cathedral, or a few folks from Broadway have actually been there, know how beautiful your sanctuary is, and how beautiful I think the sense of place is where you are, and yet you've had this strong sense of courageous, I would even say prophetic witness. And that was really my first introduction to you, Bishop, was in an interview you gave, I guess about 10 years ago, during the Russian occupation of the Republic of Georgia. And I think you were either here in the States, or maybe you gave the interview via phone, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But it was with National Public Radio, and you really talked about the ways in which you responded in that moment of crisis for your country. The Republic of Georgia has been at some points a war-torn country, a part of the former Soviet Union, and still in the midst of that place, which is beautiful land, but also land which has been in many ways fought over and takes a lot of courage to live in. And I will never forget that interview you gave, which just, I had never heard of you. And it just sparked my imagination in some profound ways. And you told about a dream that you had. And I would really like for listeners to get a sense of what your ministry was like in those days, and the dream that you had, which I think is an embodiment of really who you are and in the work of your church in so many ways. So would you just speak a little bit about that from, I don't know how long it's been. Actually, it's been more than 10 years, more like 15.
Yes, 2008. It was in 2008, yeah.
12 years, okay.
Well, when the war broke out between Georgia and Russia, or to be more precise, when Russians attacked Georgia, I was in London working on my doctoral dissertation. And obviously I was shocked. That was the first feeling, and very, very strong feeling of helplessness. And I knew immediately that I had to go back immediately to Georgia, but I did not know what I could tell to my own people. The ministry of Christian ministers is about bringing encouragement and telling people, do not be afraid. But I could not tell anybody, do not be afraid, because I was afraid myself. And Georgia is a small country, very small indeed. Less than 5 million people, very small territory, and this small country is being attacked by the largest country in the world. And what can you feel? I was deeply depressed, and I was scared to go to Georgia, not because of the war, but because I, as a minister of gospel, could not tell anything positive to the people. So then I have this dream, and this dream was very vivid. And I saw myself standing right in front of the person who was a nemesis of the war and terror, and has continued to be since then. And that was Vladimir Putin. I was looking into his eyes, and I was telling him, do not be afraid. And I kept telling him, do not be afraid, do not be afraid. And every time I said, do not be afraid, he shrunk and shrunk and shrunk. And I was able to embrace him and keep him in my arms and keep telling him, do not be afraid. And when I woke up, I realized that I could go back to Georgia and tell my people not to be afraid of the largest country which had invaded us, which had abused it, raped women, smashed everything they could, they stole everything. And now I could go and tell both politicians and my own people in the church that we should not be afraid and we should not give space to hatred and fear being invaded by the largest country. And on my way, I was in Heathrow Airport. I received this call from the journalist from the States. And I had just told him what I had experienced the night before, that it was very vivid. I can't remember what did I say, but I was full in courage and inspiration, and I felt I had a message to bring back to Georgia.
I heard that story 12 years ago, and 12 years later, it still very much affects me, Malkhaz. I just happened to be listening to the radio that day when you came on, and I'm so grateful for it because it got me watching you from afar. And then through the Alliance of Baptists, we were able to begin an actual first, I would say, a collegial connection, and now a deep, deep friendship. And you continue to inspire me so much. Last year, you were here in Fort Worth with us. And one of the things that we did together was to go to the George W. Bush Presidential Library, where we spoke with varying representatives from the library who are working on issues of international peace. And really, your country represents that struggle between the East and West. Sometimes it's a struggle, sometimes it's collaborative, but of course, the story that you've just told is one of certainly a struggle. And I know that you have continued that so very much. And as we were going around last year together, sharing the story of your work a little bit, you kept on telling a story that I just loved, which is the story of the rugs. And so I want you to tell that story. And let me just give it a little context to say, your community has been a very brave, expansive, large-hearted expression of what I would call Christ's embrace of the world, of all people, of people of varying faiths and traditions. And the Peace Cathedral itself is an expression of that. So you might tell a little bit about what you have done at the Peace Cathedral itself. And then also you've got to share the rug story because I love it so much. And I believe others will also.
This is what we learned for last 30 years of being ministers for Christ, that whenever crises arrive, and they keep arriving almost every year, we learn to respond to this crisis with some creative projects. And whatever happens, whatever ugliness happens, we would like to confront with beauty, and hence our Orthodox tradition on responding to the ugliness.
Courage and beauty.
Courage and beauty, yes, indeed. So this is what the cathedral has always been doing. And when you mentioned, I think it was very, very generous of you to admire the cathedral architecture, interior architecture. But this architecture came into being as a result of one of the main crises in the life of our church, when we had to deal with the issue of Islamophobia and with homophobia. And we thought that these are two ugly faces of hate and fear, and we need to confront them the way we can. And we started constructing the interior of the church in the best traditions of Georgian aesthetics, Orthodox aesthetics. And also we decided to create two spaces in the cathedral for those people who are hated most, for Muslims and for Jews and others. So what we have initiated was to build two side chapel in the church, one for Muslims, one for Jews, and then say, if you are a Jew, you can't make contribution to the synagogue, and if you are a Muslim, you can't make contribution to the mosque. Christians and Muslims can contribute to the synagogue, and Christians and Jews can contribute to the mosque. And this is how it all started regarding the cathedral. But we have also been always very concerned about social responsibilities in our land, and we always, in our region, and we always felt strongly that there is always that something could be done for the suffering and poor. 2 years ago, there was flooding in Iran. 70,000 people died, thousands of cattle and livestock, and people were left without any shelter. So we felt we had to do something about it. We had to bring some beauty to this ugly development when nobody wanted to help those people, including their own authorities. So we started raising funds and also reviewed all the video footages. And I saw that in one of the video footages, children's toys were floating in the flood. And I thought, why don't we collect toys and money to buy toys and send to the children? That would be a beautiful way to respond to their suffering. And I made connection to my friends in Iran. I said, we are going to raise money for toys and send to the children who lost their toys in the flood. And they said, what on earth do we need the toys? We need carpets. I was this close to say, whether do you like to have flying carpets or the ordinary ones? And they said, we need carpets, because carpets for us, in my culture, and I suppose it is in your culture as well, carpets are about luxurious life, to decorate your homes. But in Iran, carpets are about their lives. They sleep on carpets, they eat on carpets, they do all homework on carpet. Children do their exercises on the carpet. So everything is related to carpets. Now these carpets were gone. So we started raising funds, and we managed to raise about 9,000 euros. That was sufficient to buy 200 good family carpets. So we made arrangements, contacted the leader of the factory, this is a family factory, and said that we have got this money and we would like to buy 200 family carpets. And the director of the carpet factory, was so moved that Christians were collecting the money for carpets that would go not to Christians in Iran, but to Muslims, and they would not care which families they would go to. So he decided to give 100 carpets from his account. So we had 300 carpets to go from village to village, from town to town and distribute in the families who had been suffering so long. So this carpet story really, it's hilarious on one hand, but on the other hand, it tells you how important it is to listen to the people at the grassroots, what they really need. So it was my idealistic view to bring toys and send them there, but they needed something more important, more essential. And we thanks to be God, we managed to accomplish this. And also this Muslim fellow was so deeply moved that he was going to contribute, to give free 100 carpets to the project.
That to me is so much a modern expression of the parable of the Good Samaritan. I just love that story. Go and do likewise. Is basically what that gentleman felt stirring in his heart. Okay, if these Christians can do this, then surely I can also. I just love that.
It's so moving.
You said you talked to your friends in Iran, and it's probably important for listeners to know about your larger peace work within both the region and then also on into more of the Near East. And especially I know that you've been doing some very intentional peace work within with even recent times with respect to conflict. And so would you just maybe describe a little bit about that broader kind of work that the Peace Cathedral is about and what it is that you're doing to try to make peace?
Right. I think it was one of the 20th century Christian worker who said that if you cannot do anything for those who are suffering, you can at least smile at them and give a gift of smile. So we felt that whenever the crisis happened, there's always that something could be done, however little it could be. So little by little, we realized that even though we are a very small country, very small church, we can make things happen. And surely enough, we have been seeing a lot of positive changes taking place as a result of the work of Peace Cathedral in Iran, in Turkey, in Iraq, and recently when we met together with representatives of George W. Bush Library, one of the concern was the advocacy work for Yazidi women. And Yazidis are the most persecuted religious group in the world and most endangered ethnicity. So we could not turn our blind eye, particularly when, even now when we speak, hundreds of women remain in sex slavery and nobody really wants to do anything about it. And we were encouraged and we were inspired to do everything we can to raise awareness about them. At the library, we went together, at the State Department where we had a meeting, at the United Nations, we had encounter with some representatives. We will never know when these things can make the impact, but we are trying our best to bring reconciliation between people of different cultures and religions and traditions. And what we did since the breakup of the war between Armenia and Azerbaijan was only natural for the cathedral. And we invited Azerbaijanians and invited Armenians to come together and pray for peace. And Yazidis also joined us. So we have 4 religions came together and prayed together for peace. And I should admit that first few minutes of the encounter when there were Azeris on one hand, Armenians, they were looking at each other as enemies. And then we sat in chairs and offered prayers. We read Christian scriptures and we read the Muslim scriptures, and then we offered prayers. Then we saw a miracle of peace. I don't know what it is, but all my life I've been working for peace, but that was something that was so tangible that prayer for peace actually produced peace among the people who were sitting together. And it gives you hope that if it is possible to do in one particular setting, it should be possible to do it elsewhere, to expand and enlarge the group of people who will be sharing and feeling need for the peace and working for peace. And I should tell you that some of the people who were sitting in the Peace Cathedral on either side were supporting the war, encouraging their peoples to spill their blood for their homeland and for the glory of their nations. And then I saw the same people sitting there, and after having offered prayers, they embraced each other. And it was almost, I had a feeling, it was first time I saw the possibility and the power of peace, what it can do to the individuals. And there was no hypocrisy on either side when they embraced each other. It was real. And then we said, okay, what shall we do next? And then decided we will be praying every Saturday. And for the first time in the life of a church, all these four religions started to come together and pray for peace on a regular basis. We used to meet in the church once a week. That was a regular religious practice. And now Yazidis, Christians, Muslims, Armenians, and Azeris came together and prayed together. And I think it was remarkable. And then the reaction was fascinating. I received only from Iran 115 emails from clergy, high-ranking clergy, asking how could they join this prayer vigil and what they could do for peace. And the emails came from Turkey and from Iraq and from Israel. Very prominent rabbis joined us in prayer. And friends from the UK, and friends from the States, and friends from Germany, from the House of One. So that was suddenly we were receiving emails from New Zealand and Australia, and something that started as a very modest encounter to try out whether we come together and seek reconciliation between enemies. It became sort of global movement, which makes you think that peace is really appealing to humanity. And I think in the aftermath of this pestilence, COVID-19, we will be forced to realize how important it is to strengthen our solidarity with each other.
Right. You say this, and I think to myself, if the work that you're doing for peace is possible there amongst those people, then me hearing this as an American, I think to myself, with all of our division within our own country, then surely peace should be possible here amongst our own kindred.
Yeah.
And so it is an inspiration to hear you say peace is possible everywhere. and blessed are the peacemakers, Malkhaz. So thank you for that. You mentioned COVID, and last year we were together in, I think, either the very tail end of February. Well, excuse me, this year, still this calendar year. It feels like 100 years ago.
Yeah, so many things have changed since then. Yeah.
We were together. It was either the last weekend of February or the first week of March. I mean, it was right before COVID-19 swept across the United States. And you were here, you had just come from Iran. Then you stopped over in New York City with the United Nations. I think you may have been in Washington, D.C. as well. And then you came here, we visited the library. You went down to Waco and met with friends from Baylor University. And I saw you off at the airport and we hugged, really having no idea how this next 9 months would unfold. We had heard of this COVID-19 and we knew it was dangerous, but to what degree our lives would be affected, we had no idea, I don't think. So I'm just curious how you're doing. How has COVID-19 impacted your community and your ministry?
Well, this pandemic, this virus, which is not visible even, you can see it through this special equipment, has almost brought all of us to our knees. It has changed. It has changed, and it will be changing the world, I believe. For the first time, I had to tell our people that we should not be coming to the church. The ministers, I instructed our ministers to ask people not to come to the church against all our instincts, because the life is greater value for, in our tradition, our common tradition, than anything else, including piety. But you might like to bear in mind that we live in the country which is dominated by the Orthodox tradition, Orthodox ecclesial tradition, which may not be as attractive as Orthodox theology or aesthetics. And the Orthodox Church until now keeps telling the faithful that the power of the church, the power of the Holy Spirit can drive the virus from the faithful. And until now, they are administering communion, the Lord's Supper, with a single spoon. Can you imagine? They're using one single spoon to administer the Eucharist, bread and wine together, to thousands of people. And surely enough, now we are perhaps one of the worst, perhaps even worse country, the United States, as far as the percentage of the population is. So every day we have got dozens of deaths and thousands of people that are being infected. So it has certainly challenged and changed our understanding of as to how to serve the people. And then we saw that the most vulnerable people being not only suppressed and sidelined by entire society. And it came to our knowledge that the sex workers, for instance, transgender sex workers, appear to be the most vulnerable people in the society. They lost their jobs, or whatever you may call it. They lost their incomes, they lost their daily food. They were kicked out from the places where they live. And we as a church had to issue a statement. I said, everybody who is left without shelter, without food, without any support, come to the church. And we opened the doors of the church. And people started to come from all walks of life. So I think even in this tragic development in the life of the humanity, we found our role to serve the poor and needy and most devastated. And I'm also very proud of our faithful, that there was no single member of the church that objected that we opened the door of the church and let all the people come and sleep in the sanctuary, and we provided food and medicine and testing whenever it was needed, until the crisis started to subside a little bit. We have also learned some skills we never had or never wished to have. So we learned how to communicate the word of encouragement using this contemporary mass media. So we keep recording our services on live stream and asking people to respond and reflect on the daily readings of scriptures. So it keeps you quite busy, even though you do not.
Most assuredly.
Yes, indeed. But it is a kind of encouraging to see how much you can do when you're so limited in resources, in movement, in communication, and in social relations. But I would like to believe that we can emerge as humanity slightly better than we used to be. This is my naive, optimistic view of the immediate future.
Yeah, your naivete keeps changing the world, and so we're grateful for that. I was, I think for American listeners, I think it's important to know the kind of courage it takes to do the kinds of things that you've been speaking of in your particular context. To be open and compassionate towards the LGBTQ community, to open the doors of the church to transgender persons and sex workers at that. I mean, these are not things that in your particular context, the Orthodox Church which is very much influenced, continues to be, I think, by Russia, by a very strong kind of narrow patriarchal vision. And your understanding is so much, is so broad and inclusive and loving. And I think of Christ, and I don't wish to speak ill of other traditions, but I just, for our listeners to hear me say, it takes courage for you to do the things that you do, where you do them especially. And I think it gives us courage where we are to say what is within our realm of possibility. How can we be naive about changing this world? This coming Sunday is at Broadway Baptist, our World Hunger Sunday, where we take up a collection for world hunger. And the last couple of years, we have partnered with you and what is an extension of the Peace Cathedral and your ministry, which is the Gory Soup Kitchen. And I thought we might, as we're nearing the end of our conversation together, have you share a little bit about the work of the Gory Soup Kitchen, the kinds of people it is helping as you seek to literally bring bread to the hungry body.
The Gory Soup Kitchen was established immediately in the aftermath of Russian invasion of Gori. And while the city was still occupied, I went to the city under the Russian occupation, being fully dressed and that gave me certain protection to go wherever I wanted to go. And it was Feast of Transfiguration. And I had in my bag 5 loaves of bread, and 1 bottle of wine. So when I got to the church, there was a family who were visibly poor, ill-dressed, ill-cared of, looking hungry. So I took out from my bag these 2 loaves of bread and gave them. And that gave us an idea to start soup kitchens for the people who are most vulnerable. And the soup kitchen was supported for a few years by some Western Christian organizations, because our church has a number of social projects, and we were not able to fund the soup kitchen, which was most needed. So we asked some Western friends to come and help, and they did come. But it is very sad story, I should say, that a few years ago, before the Broadway Baptist Church stepped in, we received a letter from these donor organizations telling us, before Christmas, it was a sort of Christmas gift, telling us they could not support Gory Soup Kitchen because of the take of the leadership of the Baptist Church of Georgia on interfaith relations and LGBTQ community. Those destitute people, we are punished because of my understanding on love of Christ and inclusion of everybody. So those people who had nothing to do with homosexuality, nothing to do with interfaith work, we are punished. And we are very grateful that Broadway Baptist Church stepped in, came on rescue really, because it would be so painful to abandon those people for hunger. And now since then, every day, 60 people come to the church. They are being fed, and some food are sent with them whenever they go home. Their clothes are being washed. When they need medical care, doctors are being brought there. So it started with a soup kitchen, but now it is a bit more than just a soup kitchen, because it is a full-fledged care for the people nobody cares for. And I could not thank you enough for generosity of your heart to come and rescue. And when we learned from the Alliance of Baptists that Broadway was open to come and help, we were reduced to tears, because we did not know how to raise this money, because we raised money here and there, but it was not nearly enough. Yeah. So I'm immensely grateful. I'll be sending some pictures and video footage from Gory that I was asked to send for your meeting next Sunday. And please do ask each and everyone at Broadway Baptist Church that whatever you do for those poor in Gory, you are doing it for Jesus Christ, and more, you are doing it for humanity, for which I am deeply grateful and humbled by your generosity.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
Thank you, Malkhaz. It's been so wonderful to share this time with you. You inspire me so much. I'm going to come to Georgia one of these days. I've got to get there.
You ought to. Yes, indeed.
We've had a delegation or two from Broadway to go and to spend time with you there. And I'm going to make it a point at some point. But but you inspire me from afar even. And I just thought in closing, you talk a little bit about when we come out of this, when we come out of COVID, when there is a vaccine, where are we going as a world, as a Christian community? How do we embody a sense of reconciliation? There is so much strife here in the States, politically, racially. It's of course been impacted by a lot of conversation around Russia, and all of these things you are no stranger to, because you have been in the midst of ethnic conflict and been a peacemaker. So where do you see us going? What do we need to do next in order to be the peacemakers we are called to be in whatever cathedrals we're at, wherever they are?
I think I need to offer yet another thought from my naivete. That is your reaction. In 2006, I was arrested in Belarus for meddling with presidential elections in the country. What it really was, I went along with a group of clergy to support Christians who dared to stand for justice and fairness. And 2 days later, we were arrested, then released owing to intervention of Georgian government and United Nations. And then immediately we were chastised by European Baptists, for Baptist hierarchy, for meddling in the matters of other territories of Baptist churches. And then I received an invitation from the Lambeth Palace, where
Lambeth Palace is the palace in London, run by the Anglican bishop, Archbishop of Canterbury, in fact.
Yes. Then Archbishop of Canterbury, I received this lovely invitation, and I went there, and I was given a Lambeth Cross, which is given to the people for audacity and courage. So that was rather nice. And as I was signing this book of the recipients who received this cross, I found out that the previous recipient of the cross was Brother Roger Schutz. He was the founder of ecumenical community in Thèse, France.
Oh, Thèse.
Where this ecumenical movement started. So I decided I would go and see Brother Roger and speak to him. So by the time I managed to get to France, he was killed.
Oh, yes.
And then I was sitting with his successor in the room where he slept and where he died. I was talking to him about the legacy of Brother Schutz, whom I never met. Brother Alois is his name.
He was killed during worship at Thèse.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. So
by a pilgrim.
Yes. From Romania, I believe, a woman. Yeah. So I asked Alois, what was this thing that gave him courage, Brother Roger Schutz, to bring these Catholics and Protestants together in his community? And then Brother Alois remembered what Roger used to say about it, that once he was sitting in the garden and in his heart, he managed to reconcile Catholics and Protestants. And then he thought, if I manage to reconcile them in my heart, then I can encourage people, Catholics and Protestants, to be reconciled. So I thought that was a very, very nice thought. Then I continued thinking and meditating on it. And then I said, if Roger could reconcile Catholics and Protestants in his heart, and everything starts from the heart, why can't we reconcile in our hearts Christians and Muslims, Jews and Muslims, people of faith or none? And that was a sort of discovery for me, to believe that differences could not perceive as hindrances, but rather gifts that we can bring together if we manage to reconcile in our hearts. So hence my naivete. I believe that things do not happen at the UN or State Department. Things happen in our hearts. And once we realize that diversity is not hindrance, that could happen. And in all my stupidity and naivety, I see some results. I see that people can be reconciled. People who used to hate each other. But I realize that personal commitment, each and everyone, is important. If I'm able to reconcile Muslims and Jews together in my heart, if I'm able to reconcile heterosexuals and homosexuals and transgender in my heart, then it should be possible that we can create this society where we can respect each other and learn from each other's experiences.
Malkhaz, I love your naivete, my friend. God bless you. You are such a treasure and such an inspiration to me personally. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, friend.
I love you so much, and I pray protection upon you. I say this every week, and I don't think you've heard this. So I'm going to give you my benediction, which I think is a good word for, hopefully a good word for you. Because in some kind of sense, I would say you've inspired it. And it says this: depart now with the Spirit of God in Christ in you, for the world needs your light and your hope and your deep, deep courage. So go and be brave, be strong, be kind, and be love. Malkhaz, always be loved, my brother.
Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Amen.
I love you so much.
Thank you. So do I.